Welcome to another episode of Systematic Geekology. This is a space where we seek to create and cultivate healthy conversations between those things we geek out on and the philosophical and theological questions that often arise out of our fandoms. Like, what does it mean to be human? What makes a hero? What makes a villain? How do the stories and narratives we geek out on shape how we live in the world? We are your priest to the geeks. We aren't all ordained, but we see ourselves as mediators at the intersection of geek culture and going deeper in our faith. We don't always have to agree, but we do respect each other, and we see everyone as a beloved child of God. Everyone geeks out on something, so come geek out with us and enjoy the show.
You're listening to an Anazal Ministries podcast.
We're here live on YouTube. We're another episode of Systematic Geekology. Hello, fellow geekologists. And I'm super excited that I have a fellow geekologist with me on this live YouTube, What's New, but mainly Star Wars. Hello, Dr. Robinson. Glad that you are able to be with us today on an episode of What's News, Systematic Geekology, but mainly Star Wars Skeleton Crew. So we're going to geek out a little bit on some things that's what's new in the culture that pops, and we're going to talk mostly Star Wars and Skeleton Crew. But before we do that, I'm excited. This is your debut on Systematic Geekology.
I'm just happy to be here. And I mean that. I've been waiting to get on. Like, I keep trying to hint at how much of a geek I am and not just a theology geek. And I'm just glad that someone finally listened.
Yeah, I was listening at your panel at beer camp, and I was like, you know what? This is going to happen. And
I'm gonna show the shirt, and then I'm going to say sometimes as a woman, you have to scream a little louder for people to hear.
That's true.
But eventually you're here. So it's great.
That's right. And I was paying attention at Geek Camp this year because you did a great panel with a friend of the show, Ryan Doze, on the Alien franchise, and you kept working in like Star Wars stuff. And I'm like, I feel like you didn't look in my direction, but your words came towards me like a tractor beam ready to pull you into like
you and Nick. I felt bad because I kept referencing Star Wars and the Shire, and I was just like, horror movies aren't like this.
That's right. So yeah, all that being said, glad you're here. There'll be more times, but this is your debut, and I know you're a big Star Wars fan and with your family and all, but we'll talk other geeky things first before we get to that. I know you through Theology Beer Camp and other Venn diagram of interests and things that we geek out on, but our listeners may not. So Dr. Robinson, a couple questions. Who are you? What do you do? Why are you on this planet called Earth?
Good Lord.
Yeah. In 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
2 minutes? Okay, that's like trip. He's like, here's 3 questions, and you have 1 minute. Who am I? Well, I am a Georgia girl by birth. Go Dogs, forever and ever. And I also am a theologian by trade. I am a wife and a sister and a daughter on this planet. Hopefully a light to some degree if we want to get very whatever about it. And a very intense advocate. So you'll hear me make comments and you'll be like, oh, she's making those comments. Yeah, that's just going to be me forever. So if you're okay with it, then that's fine. Always going to try to find that in there. So mom to a dog and 3 cats. And I'm here in North Carolina.
So I embarrass my kids because every person that has they're walking a dog, I need to know the dog's name. I need to meet the dog. So, and I'm fascinated by pet names and what people name their pets. So, I need to know your dog's name, cat's names, and let's meet your animals.
This is a true test, Will. This my dog's name? But do you know the character? This is testing your geekology here.
I see a coffee mug, folks who are listening to this. Those on YouTube, glad you're here live with us. But no, for the podcast, there's a coffee mug with what I see like a like a dachshund dog?
Little dog with a little pumpkin on his nose.
Oh, there
That should
you
be
go.
a key.
It's from Nightmare on once. Oh man, it's not a movie that
At the beginning. Nightmare's key.
Oh, I love this geek pop quiz right off the bat. You can tell she's a professor, folks. You can tell she's a professor. I'm already being quizzed and I'm getting nervous and starting to sweat.
It's okay. I will save you from yourself. Nightmare Before Christmas, because
that's it.
I also love is Halloween. And my dog's name is Zero from Nightmare Before Christmas, because that is the loyal ghosty dog. I have a Salem, and Stuart got to name one, so we have a Kylo Ren.
Oh,
It's a ginger cat.
On brand.
Maybe evil and maybe isn't. It's up for debate. You know, certainly isn't kissing all of the girls in the house. That's fine. Just see.
Hopefully there's not a Jedi Master ready to kill him because he had a bad thought about him. That's, come on.
We're just going to sneak those in every once in a while. And then we have a Beethoven who was a foster. That's a deaf cat, completely white, hence the Beethoven. And then just after a year, we were like, is anyone going to take this cat back? And then they didn't. And that's how cats work.
That's how cats work.
So now we
are petless at the moment. I had a dog, Woody, passed away a year ago. We're still grieved that dude. And the latest Superman trailer that just came out, I don't know if you saw it, had look it up. And it wrecked me because Crypto, the super dog, shows up and he looks a little like Woody with his ears. And when I saw that dog, I just it wrecked me in a good way. So
I don't think people understand. I mean, people do understand if they've lost. Oh God, you're on my phone somehow. I'm going to put that.
They're listening.
I think people forget that, like, pets, unless you've had pets, in which case I'm talking to you as well. It's just like how much you get. They're like your children. They really are.
They have personalities. They're with you. You're with them for amount of time. They're so good. Yeah. You're a professor. You're a theology nerd. You're also got great geek cred when it comes to all the geeky things we get out. But what specifically do you teach? And then I'm going to let you plug a couple books here. What you have a book out. You have one that's getting ready to come out. Share that briefly.
Absolutely. So I am a professor of practical theology, and when I'm teaching undergraduates, honestly, I'm also a world religions professor, as well as theory of religion and history of the U.S. and religion is a particular area of mine. So that's my kind of undergraduate teaching. And then if I do postgrad, it's usually theology stuff. I was educated in Scotland along with many of our great cohort. Yeah. And I worked at the University of Edinburgh. So my PhD professor, who was my supervisor, retired, and I took her job, which is a little flex there. And then got to be boss of a couple of our friends on the podcast.
That's right.
Which I do love to remind them of often. So then I came to the US and I'm still a professor, still doing that work. The books that I would plug, I currently have 3 that are out in the world. One is one is being done right now. And those are, one is my PhD dissertation. If you're really into Northern Ireland and just really slogging through some systematic theology, you can get that one. Yeah. It's called Embodied Peace Building. And the other one is, the other 2 are Bad Theology and Bad Theology and COVID. And those are currently out right now. This is a cool thing. Okay. And as someone who is actually kind of poor at self-promotion, Trip will tell you this. If you put my name into Amazon, I'm the first 3 that come up. Not that you should buy from Amazon because it's not the publisher.
Right.
But the first 3 books, if you want reference as to what the books are, they're present. So I felt pretty happy about that. Anyway, so those books are out. Bad Theology and COVID is one that I just came out with. And it was a real... it just came out. It's in hardback right now because it's with Palgrave. So it's a little expensive, but if you wait a while, I shouldn't say this, but sorry, Tom, all of our publishing people, it'll go down eventually.
Yeah.
Or, you can just talk. You just bring me on your podcast. I'll talk about it.
Or you get a sneak peek because you know people and you're like, oh, cool. Can't wait to read this a little bit before.
Don't look here, look away. So, and then I have a new book that I'm working on right now that's with Lexington Press. It's about the LGBT community and conversion therapy. And I'm doing an ethnography and doing some interviews with people who survived that. Yeah. So, just out here doing the Lord's work. Just not in a church. I told Will, I was like, he goes, do you want to do morning or afternoon? I was like, my afternoon sermons were always more productive than my morning sermon.
Right. That 8:30 service, gets the practice round before I get to hop into 11. Some things I work out 8:30. Oh, that didn't land right. This good. Oh, what's to say? But often our 8:30 crew, man, they are up and spry and more awake than 11 o'clock crew. But it's probably because most of them have kids.
If you're a morning person, I'm telling you this. Even my mother was not a morning person. Is not a morning person. She's still alive. She's a nurse and she lives on a mountain and has to commute. She used to keep me up late and so she had kids. I don't even think it's the kid. The kids will train you into getting up early, but how your soul exists in the morning is a difference altogether. And I think some people are just like, yeah.
It's definitely an Enneagram type of morning and night person, or when you have your caffeine and when it hits, and I do have to wake up for pretty early for that 8:30 service to kind of get woken up and warmed up and head in the right space. But well,
when those jokes drop, you got to change them up.
You got to change them up. Working it out there. So this is a what's new episode, and where we talk about what's new in pop culture and things we're geeking out of. We'll spend a little time just with a few quick hits, and then we're going to focus mainly on Star Wars Skeleton Crew, because I can't wait to talk about this, and knowing that you're a fellow Star Wars geek and your family is, we'd love to hear your hot take on those things. And so I got since it's a lightning round, we got to do lightsaber round. There it is. We're gonna do another.
You got the sound effects too.
We have some sound effects. So I'll just share, give you a chance to think, in terms of just a few things you're geeking out lately that's new out there. If it's not new, directly hit the pop culture, that's okay. It might just be new to you. But I'll share, over Christmas, we watched Squid Game season 2. Don't know if you're a Squid Game. I know you're like horror, but I don't know if you're a Squid Game person or not.
Yeah. I mean, I watched the first season some. I didn't finish it, I will say.
Yeah.
So here is my one caveat to the horror genre, and this is going to be interesting. I don't like invasion horror, and I don't like necessarily some of the stuff I always say I don't like movies I can't predict. I'm a total and complete hypocrite and liar, because here's the thing with Squid Game. I didn't know who's going to die, and I was upset about it.
There you go.
It stressed me out. And so I was like, I'm going to finish it. But then I was like, I'm doing Dry January, not as again, that is the least flex I will do on this episode. But I'm doing that. And so I can't drink wine. So I was like, nope, I'm not going to do it. I'm
not going to do it. That's fair.
I need to know, I have to be lubricated before I see who's going to just get shot by some doll with laser beams in her eyeball.
Oh my gosh. I know. Dry January is a thing and I applaud it. But I was telling somebody the other day, even my daughter who's 22, we were like, maybe January should be self-medicate January, clean up February. That's a thing. January is a thing. I don't know if I can do Dry January, but maybe February, March, or come Lent. Lent hits. That's Lent, why Lent is where it is. I'll do that.
Lent is where it is, says the two ministers in the room. But still, I totally agree, because the thing about Jane, honestly, I did it because my husband was really excited. He wants to run a race. I'm like, okay, let's do this. It is a slog. And I don't even think I'm too type A to be crazy and jumping off the walls. But I will say, you do start to see the places where you're like, oh, I can't watch Squid Game without a glass of Cabernet.
I did a dry Advent. I tried to treat Advent like Lent and did dry Advent leading up to Christmas, but then different life situations hit, and I was just like, oh man, I'm gonna do my best, but I didn't. If we're on a pass fail system, I passed, but it would not with flying colors.
But I think also people make it like there was a New York Times thing that was out recently. I didn't read it because it was behind a paywall. Let's get real. But like, it was one of those things where it was like dry January makes me want to drink. January is the worst month. There's so many days in January. It never ends. You know this. You're in North Carolina. When did it start snowing? January. When do you want a whiskey by the fire? January. Like, it's just.
And like back to like Squid Game, like I agree. Squid Game, I bought into the hype when season 1 came out. I was like, I gotta check this out. I gotta see what people are raving about or doing. And it is violent. It's not for the faint of heart. I question why it's so popular, but it's intriguing. It's a storyline that gets to the heart of people and economic justice and what people are a slave to or chasing and all those big questions that should be there in a TV show or things you can get on. So, and then they made a real reality show about Squid Game where there are people where they weren't killing them. They were taking them off the board, but similar like relational dynamics of people and what they're playing for in terms of money and backstabbing and why they're there and intrigue. So there's a real reality show about it. And then here comes season 2 that I was kind of excited about. And then I did like it. It's more of the same. They did switch up the games, not the same as season 1. And then there's some twists and turns in there that make it not exactly like season 1. And there is a game that they play in there that we played growing up at like church camps, and I would actually leave as a camp counselor and lead at family camp called Mingle. We've all done it. Mingle, and group in different groups of 2 or 3 or 4 people, and you got to find your group and do an icebreaker, of favorite color, that kind of thing. So, so when they started playing that game, I was like, oh man, this is hitting.
You didn't murder each other at church.
We didn't murder each other, but now that I can't not think about that game now.
I think that's probably for the best based on your current career path.
That's good advice.
That might have been a tough reference to Cole.
Other 2 things geeking out on. I did like Squid Game season 2. I think it was a little short, but then I'm going to 7 episodes. I watched Creature Commandos. I finished that on HBO Max, which is James Gunn's animated cartoon that's just as violent as Squid Games and explicit, and it was good. If you like his run on Suicide Squad, you will like this cartoon.
I love Suicide Squad.
Then you will like this. You don't watch it with young.
I'm a DC girl through and through.
Yeah, and it I liked it. It fell a little flat for me because I felt like it was more of the same, and that James Gunn was kind of retreading a lot of things with just different characters. And so at the end of it, I was like, "Yep, that was the thing. It was good. It was fun. It's James Gunn. James Gunn I trust for what he's doing with the DC universe." But particular Creature Commandos, I was like, it was okay. And then one of my favorite comedians, I love stand-up comedy, all kinds of stand-up comedy. And Nate Bargatze did a one dropped on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve called Your Friend, Nate Bargatze, and it's very good. He's a clean comic, wholesome. He's the exact opposite of Squid Game and Creature Commandos. You can watch it with an 8-year-old and you don't feel guilty at all. But I love his cadence. I love his self-deprecating humor.
He sounds like us a little bit.
Yeah.
He's a Southern comic, right?
He's a Southern comic, and his accent, cadence, and the way he tells a story, I just love it. I listen to his podcast too, Nate Land. So I was really happy about that dropping on Netflix. So that's what I've been geeking out on. How about you? Before we get into Skeleton Crew, Leah, what about you and your family? Some new things you're geeking out on?
Well, I will say my family is not into Star Wars, but Stuart certainly is. I want to show you this before. This is when we first started dating. This is Leah's brief guide to Star Wars. The Skywalker family tree, page 1.
Of course.
I'm going to bring this to beer.
Practical. Okay. You're doing practical Star Wars theology. You're bringing it to the people.
Look at this timeline of galactic history. He made all of this. Isn't that wild?
I love it.
So, and then when we were watching Skeleton Crew, well, we can go to that in a moment, but he would make comments. He was like, because I'm always big on the timeline. I'm a part-time historian, as you've heard. And I like to know how things go. That helps me know the story. So I'm always, when we watch these, what I consider kind of interloper TV shows and stuff, I like to know, because in my head, there's like the first 3, like the prequels, the original 3, and then the Ray 3. And I need to know like where everything is in the midst of all of that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. So the things
we'll see where Skeleton Crew falls on that.
I know. Well, he has thoughts about this. I almost brought him in, but he has to work his big boy job so we can pay the mortgage. Meanwhile, I get to do this. So the things I'm geeking out on. So there are, I'm watching the TV show From. I don't know if you've heard of this before.
No.
But it's
that's why we do
Carol
this.
Perrineau, who was in Lost. Now,
we're big Lost fans. Big Lost fans in our family.
So it's very much in the same vein. I would argue, I'm only at season 3. I would argue it's a little less, it's scarier. So I don't know what age you said 22, but I wouldn't let little kids watch this. Like if they're impressionable, I don't know. Me as a little kid, maybe, but if they're not dead inside.
Depends on what kind of little kid we're talking.
Because there's like, essentially, this is the premise is that there's a town where if you go through it, you get stuck there. And at nighttime, bad guys come out. This is the scary part. They're like little vampire-y thingies, and they just like rip you apart. And they figured out that they can put up these talismans, which are just like little stones. And they're not really sure what they say. They just found them, but it keeps the bad guys out. So they just can't go outside.
Okay.
This is their whole life. And it's like one street. And people keep coming in, and the people who are coming in are connected to the people who are there, and people are starting to be like, what is this? So it's kind of the thing in Lost where if you guys have watched Lost, where you're like, is this supernatural? Is this constructed? Like, what are we doing here? Like, and From is another one, and it has the guy that's in Lost.
What platform is From on?
So it's on FX. Which is difficult for us streaming folk. If you have cable, you might get it. I don't know. But like YouTube TV, we're now on, I'm going to say this. Well, no, I'm not, because we're on YouTube. If you want to get YouTube TV, then you can get that. That's all I'm going to say. I was like, where are we?
YouTube is listening. How many people got watching? One of those 5 eyes on us right now is definitely YouTube.
So YouTube TV.
But FX and Hulu have combined this bundle thing with Disney Plus. So sometimes FX will hop on Hulu.
It's on Max.
Disney Plus.
But you have Max as well. I think Max is just sort of taking over everything right now. So it's there. So that's what I'm geeking out on. I really like those shows. Those kind of like where you're not really sure. I will say my favorite show of all time is Twin Peaks.
Okay.
And so,
cool.
So I think that any show that follows what I would call a very Lynchian formula, which is like there's a mystery and the mystery is there. Whether it's who killed Laura Palmer, what is the island, how do we get out of this town, whatever the mystery is. And then you have these clusters of characters who are all trying to figure out the main thing, but they also have their own little lives and they interact with each other. I love those kind of shows. Those can go on super. I mean, I wouldn't say like Supernatural forever because that's too long, but like
those are good shows. And I think when that mystery box, how long do you keep it going? When you reveal, when you're not, that's the kind of the economy of storytelling that we talk about a lot around here, and whether you do it well or not. But yeah, that's always
the famous thing with Twin Peaks is that the network said. And my parents said in the 80s, I was a kid, but they said everyone would gather around the water cooler and be like, who do we think killed Laura Palmer? And it's like, he wanted to keep that going throughout the whole series. And the network told him he had to tell who killed her at the end of season 1. And it destroyed him. And he left.
Yeah.
He was like, that's it. That was my story. Now he came back, and this is going to tie into Skeleton Crew too.
Yeah.
He came back. Well, they did a new reboot of Twin Peaks, and I'm going to just put that in the footnote for when we talk about Skeleton Crew.
Yeah, put it that. All right. So other than From, anything else? Is there something? Yeah.
So I'm really obsessed with A24 right now, the production company, and they're not paying me to say that. But if you are into horror films, or really, honestly, if you look at some of the Oscar films right now, so those films, there was one that was called Don't Let Go, I think was the name of it, with the hand that you had to grab onto. Oh. And then there's Heretic, the one that has what's his face out recently. They're just producing like they did Midsummer, they did Ladybird. Like they're just doing like good stuff, and they're kind of operating under the radar in the sense of like they're not MGM. You don't know when their thing comes on. It just says A24. And I just think they're doing a lot of really good horror. They did Hereditary. Like if you think of any of the like really epic horror films that made you think that weren't just like, you know, let's go slash at Camp Crystal Lake, then they're really there. So A24 I'm obsessed with. Third and final thing is that I had never read, and I talked to the Tolkien folks about this. Tolkien is fine. However, and don't tell anyone from Edinburgh or Trip or anyone, don't act like this is live. I am a deep, deep C.S. Lewis fan.
Okay.
Hardcore. My little self. I didn't even grow up evangelical, but I still have him in my heart. So I have actually started the Space Trilogy. I never read the Space Trilogy, and I am interested to see what he does with space. Yeah. Because I've not seen
fun.
It. Yeah.
It is fun. There's concepts in there that I still think about on a daily basis with the Space Trilogy in terms of how we encounter other planets or what could be going on out there. Why is it so quiet? Those kind of questions that astronomers and astrophysicists ask all the time. And I think C.S. Lewis's imagination is great. Yeah. There's I'm a big C.S. Lewis fan. I grew up Lutheran, so I didn't grow up evangelical Lutheran Church of America. I grew up, but C.S. Lewis really kind of helped spark my imagination with the Narnia books and theology, and then went from there. And then loved Tolkien as a camp counselor all summer before we had phones and social media. I read all of Tolkien and all the Lord of the Rings that whole summer. It was magical. But then there's a new book out by John Hendricks, who did The Faithful Spy about Dietrich Bonhoeffer. It's kind of a graphic novel. It's like a novel with pictures and words. It's not necessarily a traditional graphic novel or comic book, but it's a book with images and pictures and drawings. And so he did that with Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He just put out a new one called Mythmakers, which is the friendship between C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, and how they affected one another, and what that meant for their lives and creative lives. And we're going to interview him not too long from now on Systematic Ecology about his book. So it's a book called Mythmakers. I got it for Christmas. Haven't read it yet, but I've heard great things. And
I've been to the Eagle and Child. I brought up the Inklings to Tolkien people. I've flirted my way into the C.S. Lewis house in Oxford, which is a whole story into itself.
Oh, I need to hear that at beer camp. Next beer camp, I need to hear that story.
Hey, if you're a slightly geeky girl with glasses, you can get in there.
Yeah. I would love man, and I think we talked about that before here on Systematic Ecology. The kind of like the Inklings was Systematic Ecology. It was God Loves Geeks. It was the theology beer camp of them coming together around a pint and to talk about ideas and what they're working on and workshop stuff and geek out. What are you geeking out on? And what they thought the big questions leaned into that or not. So the Inklings, was definitely helped us lead into it was the forefathers, forebearers of doing this kind of.
They ran so we could stream.
That's right.
Or they drank.
Cool. That's right. All right. So it's time for Star Wars. We're going to hop right over. That's what's new with us and what we're geeking out on. But.
Hi, my name is TJ Blackwell, also known as Tejas, Tiberius Wan, Tejas Jackson, Kung Fu Dugong recently. I go by many, many names. And I came here today to ask you to please check out our YouTube channel. There are a bunch of exclusive series there, like Comic Book Ketchup, Manga Mustard, Drinks with Tejas, which is my personal favorite, the one where I get to talk to other people about their favorite drinks or just drinks in general. We have a companion series to our annual theme on YouTube. We do Friday Night Frights, Wednesday Night Weeaboo. Those are both ran by Christian Ashley. He's great. Check him out. There are exclusive shorts, which are pretty new. Christian reviews. He's going to review every Spider-Man comic one at a time, which is insane. Non-canon, which is where Joshua will be reviewing one IP from outside of canon in his favorite fandoms, or a piece of literature that is part of the biblical extra canonical material, which is a super interesting short series. Will's Wednesday pull list, where he talks about his comic book pull list each week. He picks a top comic for his weeklies. And there are other surprise bonus content. It goes straight to YouTube. And many of our regular podcast episodes get posted there as well, because, we like to see each other when we talk, and we don't want to rob you of that ability. So check us out, like, subscribe. We would appreciate it so much, and it helps us a ton. Thank you.
We're going to focus on Skeleton Crew, but before we do that, I know you have deep geek cred, but in terms of your relationship with Star Wars, I know your husband's a big fan, but before that, what was your first engagement with Star Wars? Like, was it a cartoon? Was it a movie? Was it seeing the movie in the theater? So what was your first engagement with Star Wars? And then how did it lead to now of Skeleton Crew, the latest Star Wars edition or storytelling?
I'm so excited to hear what you think about this. But so my first Star Wars, my parents didn't watch Star Wars growing up. And I'm not sure what it was. I think they were more, well, I say 70s kids, but the OGs came out in the 70s, didn't they? So I don't really know what it was. Maybe they just weren't into it. I listened to a lot of Bob Dylan and like Southern rock, to be fair, but like I never really got that. Yeah. So, but my dad was a Pepsi man for 30 plus years. This is key to the story. There you go. He would approve. Tough gig in Georgia, but he would approve. So they went through this thing in the 90s, if you remember, where they just sponsored everything.
Right.
So like we got to go to all these like movie premieres. It sounds fancy, but it was in Atlanta. Like it wasn't like Los Angeles. We drove down the road. So one of the premieres was actually the Star Wars Pepsi sponsored, the original, or not the original, but the prequels.
Okay.
So that was my first one that I saw was, I suppose it's a Phantom Menace, isn't it?
It is. 1999, Phantom Menace in the theaters.
There we go. That was the first one I saw. I would have been years old. I was in high school.
I am curious. How old were you in 99 watching
I was 17. I was 17.
Okay.
Yes. So that was my first film. And I sat there and had no idea what was going on. None.
Do you remember liking it or questioning or like, what am I watching?
I
remember
liking Hayden Christensen a whole lot.
Yeah.
But that was also, again, 17-year-old Leah was probably not the like paradigm of logical thinking at this stage.
Right.
So like, I mean, I think we got a cooler that was shaped as R2-D2 because we got all this promotional stuff and my dad still has it. And I was like, Dad, that's probably worth $1 million.
I know. Golly.
And so he's like, I'll just give it to Stewart. I don't care. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I also accept that as well. So that's the first one that I saw. Now, fast forward to going to Edinburgh and getting my PhD. I saw the OG trilogies because I dated a film major, and that will do it.
Yeah.
For you. However, I was slightly impaired when I was watching it. Let's just leave it there. And so I don't remember much. So really, Stewart is my intro into Star Wars. When we met in 2013, this was his thing. Like when I talk about him knowing it, we will get him on the show. I was like, I've got to do this on my own this time. But he like knows stuff. Like he'll be like, well, in the Clone Wars, the animated series, they said this and this and this. And then, because I was like, he was like, well, it's the rule. We were talking about the Sith last night. I was like, come on, you got to pump me up. You got to get me ready. And he was like, the rule of 2. There's only 2. We've got Darth Maul. We've got Darth Gideon. We've got Darth Bane. We've got, blah, 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 Palpatine. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, well, he was Kylo Ren's 2. Kylo Ren, we don't even know if he's a Sith or not.
No. No.
And I know. So I'm telling you, he knows, like, when I say he knows it, like, he knows.
It's on that flow chart you just showed. That's all those things.
Can you do a PhD in Star Wars?
I'm sure somewhere, but if not, we're gonna make that happen.
I mean that genuinely. Like, I think because like this was his like little intro to like a pat me on the head. This would be like like the Bible for dummies for you and I.
Star Wars for dummies. And there is a lot. There's so much lore and it's expanded over. So you're right. It's like when we ask that question, what's your first Star Wars you engaged with? It's an icebreaker, but it's also an important question to see where people land. Like, there's there's so many years of Star Wars and so many movies and so many shows and so many extended novels, graphic novels, comics. Is like, how did you engage with the video games, or did you involve? Was it the novels? Was it the first trilogy, the second trilogy, the third trilogy, the Disney? Like, there's the animated stuff. There's so much. So, in order to get to understand where people are with Star Wars and where their fandom comes from, you don't just assume that they just started with episode 4, A New Hope, and just watched it like I did. Similar to religion, it's like, where, all right, you say you're a Christian, like, where do you fall in that? Where did you first engage with the church? What church did you grow up in? What is your favorite season? I don't know. Like, it's a bigger question than just like, are you a Christian? Did you grow up in church? There's a lot more there. Same way, do you like Star Wars? Cool. All right, now let's sit down for 3 hours and discuss.
See how much you actually like it.
Yeah,
I always see the C.S. Lewis thing like this, because people will be like, well, what about Bonhoeffer? What about Carl Burt? What about Paul Tillich? I'm like, I know those guys. They're in the back. I've got them.
Yep.
This is just what I like for right now. And I feel like Star Wars people can be a little judgy. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And like we've said at Theology Beer Camp and all, in terms of people who deconstruct from, unhealthy bad theology or unhealthy faith communities, they say it's no different in fandom and at Comic-Cons, the toxic fandom that's within Star Wars. I mean, I go ahead and throw it out there. I love Skeleton Crew. I thought it was fun. And then I immediately go on to like Rebel Force Radio, my favorite Star Wars podcast, and look at their I can't wait to see what the people think on their Facebook page, and immediately like, oh, that was a little anticlimactic. Oh, I can't believe they did this. I'm like, oh my gosh, immediately with, and I understand it's hard to cut off the critical mind sometimes, especially when you like to deconstruct and reconstruct things and all that stuff. Is if that's always on, but there's a toxicity to it, which again, we've shared with Systematic Geekology. We want to create a different, healthier conversation within that, to not geek shame anybody, but it's okay to have different opinion or be disappointed in things or wish something was more than it was. But there's a way to talk about that in a healthy way that hopefully we model for folks, is what we hope. So
also, I agree with literally everything you're saying. Is that I think also what I will say is that I think it means something to people. Like for Stuart also introduced me to Doctor Who, which is its own thing that I'm also geeking out on. But forever geeking out on Doctor Who. There's lots of material.
But like that, yeah.
But there are certain episodes of Doctor Who that I will look at him and I will be like, that was trash. It's not even critical thinking. I'm just like, that just didn't hit. That's like one of those bad sermon jokes. Like, it just didn't hit. And he is this way about Star Wars, where he'll be like, please don't say that. Like, just don't. Let's just have this one thing. And then now this other thing, which is Star Wars. He doesn't want to necessarily hear, like, because I think it means something. I think that's the thing about being a geek as well, is like, I think it isn't just that you love these things. It's that these things actually mean something that kind of grounds you and helps you navigate life,
That's the story, the narrative. My story connected with another story because it resonates with me, within me and with my own story, and helps shape how I navigate a complicated, stressful world. And so if it brings me joy because of entertainment or imagination, but also it's a moral framework to help frame things and make meaning of things. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. And what we do here. So, and I think
he helped frame it. This is the last thing I'll say, and then we can go into is he said the prequels were like Hollywood blockbusters. That's the impression I got in seeing those for the first of my movies, is that they were a production. It was a thing. You had Natalie Portman. You had, all these actors that are like big actors, Liam Neeson and blah, blah, blah. They were in there. And then he said the OG3 were a niche and they had no idea what was going to happen. And it was a niche thing. And then interestingly enough, because he asked me what my favorite was out of everything.
Oh, one of my next questions. Yeah. Good.
I'm going to tell you my favorite is probably the new trilogy, the Rey trilogy. And you're going to stop and you're going to say it's because it's a girl. Weirdly, for this time only. Not the truth. He said that's like watching an indie film. He was like, the new ones are like indie films. That's it. That was his take on it. He's like, I'm not really surprised you like that. Everyone likes Rogue One. I really liked Rogue One too. I honestly didn't hate the prequels because it gave me background, and as a history person, I liked the background. Do I think Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen should be on screen together ever again? Bless their hearts, no.
No.
So I shouldn't be on screen with Natalie Portman. So, bless his heart. Bless his heart.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily love in the new trilogy where they stuck like the Skywalkers in, where they each had their own movie. I think some of that was maybe done because of Carrie Fisher's sad parting of us. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting view.
Yeah, that's good. The first movie I saw in the theater was in 1977 as a 5-year-old watching A New Hope. So that was like, and then of course my eyeballs were big, and then all those toys came out, and then all the theories of what could happen now. Oh, they're going to make another one. And I didn't know the back history of like how this movie was made, or what actors were in it, or the shoestring budget that George Lucas was just trying to keep his head above water to make this thing, his vision, come to life, and all that stuff. But then to see that the impact, I often tell people that I even judge time, like, there's before Christ, after Christ, AD, there's Common Era, there's before Christ. I judge time 1977, like, oh, that happened when? Oh, that was before Star Wars. That was 8 years before Star Wars.
Must have blown your mind.
It did. And then all the toys just hit right as a 5 to 10-year-old, and then an 8-year-old going to see Empire Strikes Back, which is my favorite just because that just hit the sweet spot of 8-year-old, and it's great. But all of the movies had, like, I couldn't wait for the prequels, and then I was on internship in seminary when that came out and couldn't wait for that. But then I was like, oh, that's the choice George Lucas made. I'm glad he has all the tech that he wants to, the technology's helping him make the movie he wants to make. But I think let's pay attention to some dialogue and storyline other than just I can make it look good.
I don't like sand. There was some sand comment.
Yes, sand comment. We'll move on to Skeleton Crew. In The Phantom Menace, there's a moment where Qui-Gon Jinn's at the table with Anakin's mom, and they're having a deep conversation around slavery and indentured servitude. And it's a meaningful conversation. And then all of a sudden Jar Jar makes like a burp or a fart joke or something. And I'm like, what are we doing? George, you don't have to make there's no comic relief here. Just lean into this, what we've wanted to see forever. And I was just like, so it was that kind of thing. I looking back, that movie has held up for me. I
feel like he gave them the story to to whatever production company. And then they were like, cool, we've got the story.
Got it. Let's run with it.
Now we're just on top.
It is my chief favorite fandom and love it. And so even when Disney's acquisition of the franchise and the IP, those movies, there's things I love about them, some things I wish they did different. And in the streaming era, we'll get a little bit more kind of where we think those hold up, in terms of post or during COVID streaming wars, what they're trying to tell the story and see what hits or not. Here we are. Let's get the Skeleton Crew, the main event. And this one falls on the timeline shortly after Return of the Jedi in the Mandalorian era of Star Wars on your flowchart there.
He calls it the Mandoverse.
The Mandoverse, exactly. And so Luke has won. Leia, they're reconstructing the New Republic. All that's going on, and so the little background for this is that the people who did this story, produced, wrote it, directed it, with the same guys behind the new Spider-Man trilogy. And when they were working on those movies with Jon Favreau, I think they pitched a storyline like, hey, you're doing a lot of Star Wars stuff. If we were ever going to tell a story, this is what we'll do. Goonies in space. 1980s kids, 1980s kids adventure, Goonies, Hook, whatever you want to throw in there as Stranger Things. Like we have an idea that would be fun if that was kind of the backdrop of these kids finding themselves, oops, I'm in a Star Wars adventure. And that went rolling, and the snowball just kept going. And that's what rolled out this thing. So for me, I loved it. I thought it was great. It was coming off The Acolyte, which was a lot of disappointment for me. And it was just steeped in expectation and lore that I think got in the way of itself, even though there were parts I liked about it. But Skeleton Crew, I think Star Wars needed a hit or needed a win. And for me, this was a victory. Was it perfect? No, either was Goonies, either was Gremlins, either was Stranger Things, anyway. But the self-contained story and the call to adventure within the story just hit right. And I thought it was great. And so I thought finale slightly anticlimactic for me. There was a couple things I wish it could have been a little bit more grandiose, but in a self-contained story, if I think of like how Goonies ended, where they just had the treasure and they were like, yay, and they roll credits. I think this was fine for me, and it's fine being what it is. It doesn't have to be steeped in expectation and lore and Jedi myth or a Skywalker legacy character or a big cameo to make it legit. It can just tell its story. And we'll talk more about some of the actors in it. Jude Law's character, Jod, man, he did so good. So I loved it. I thought it was great. I'm very happy as a Star Wars fan. I'm glad this is out there. Would have been better as a movie in the theater, probably. But the fact that they're doing this streaming and episodic week to week to keep us kind of glued in and us talking about it on podcasts and things and in a crowded market of geek stuff, why not? I thought it was good. So you watched it with your family, your husband. Where do you guys stand? Where do you stand? How this fit in the Star Wars pantheon?
Yeah, I mean, okay.
Big question.
I will say my husband liked it more than I did.
Okay.
Doesn't mean I didn't like it.
Right.
Don't come at me.
No,
Star Wars. It's not you, but he did say something interesting. And again, this is the man who does not criticize this universe. He said it didn't add anything and it didn't take away. And I think that that's fair.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think that it's a stand, as you said, honestly, as soon as you said movie, I was like, yes. I think I would have liked it as a movie. And I know that the streaming services like the week to week stuff. There were parts that were a bit of a slog. I think the second half was infinitely better than the first half.
Yep. In fact, Joshua Noel was like, I watched 2 episodes. I think it's kind of boring. I'm not going to watch. I'm like, no, watch episode 3 when you finally get Jude Law and Jod as a pirate and you get to his character. He nails it. He's great. If you don't like it after episode 3, then yeah, it's not for you. I just watched episode 3 and he did. And he's like, yep, you're right. I like it. I'm going to keep going. And that's, yeah, go ahead. That's exactly right.
No, but I think that's it. Like when I first started, I was like, now I was an 80s kid and I watched Now and Then and the Goonies and all of this sort of stuff. And I definitely saw the relation to what was happening. It's very formulaic in the sense of like you go on your adventure, you get your pals, we're doing this thing. I thought the actors were generally good. They're in a Star Wars film. I think they acted, as they should. Jude Law was exceptional. I think that's a revolution. That's a revolution for him. I think he needs to stick in that world. The ending, I don't know what I expect because it is, I would argue, a kid's show. And I mean that in the least sort of non-derivative way possible. Like it's a show that I think was, because I asked her afterwards, I said, this is not a criticism, but it's a genuine question. Who do you think this was geared towards? Like, do you think this is geared towards like the faithful, which is like Will and Stuart Gibb? Or is it like trying to get new people in? Because as a vehicle to get new people into the universe, I think it's great. You're that 5-year-old self that watched the OG, there's going to be kids watching this that are like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. So in a way, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it was geared towards kids or was it geared towards both? It could be both, like the faithful and younger gens.
I think, if I pull back the curtain a little bit, and thinking like a Disney executive and people who run, the Star Wars franchise for Disney, I think they know over the last decade, in terms of what the rise and fall and the, the unpredictable moods of fandom that I think we have a hit here and they hate it, or there's like, I don't know if this is gonna be great and they love it. Like I think they're like, let's find an avenue to get the younger audience. We need a younger audience. They're gonna age out. These original people who watch the original 3 movies or even 6, they're gonna be like, they're gonna age out at some point. How do we get new audiences in a crowded market of social media and 30-second, 10-second video clips and video games and all that stuff? People watching people play video games for crying out loud. And so they're like, how do we get it? So maybe we can gear towards a younger audience and connect with some kids. And I know some friends of mine who have younger kids were like, yep, this is a show that I heard was marketed to specifically me as a family, to watch as a family. We're watching it as a family. And there's a couple of scary parts. Like there are some pirates, there's murder, there's some scary moments. But I think to hit the 5 to 8 to 9, 10, 11-year-old and as a family over Christmas to watch this, that's what they knew what they were doing to try to do that. And there's a Disney park that has a Star Wars land that you can bring out some of these characters into that Disney park and say, this is, if you want to know more about the Skeleton Crew, here's some pirates to come and hang out. You know, don't just go to Pirates Caribbean. You can go to Star Wars Pirate Land or whatever they're going to do. They knew what they were doing. So I do think it was geared towards that. So I had to kind of say, yep, this is for younger audience. But for me, there was some levity to it because it wasn't so steeped in lore and expectation. What are they going to do with Luke Skywalker? What are they going to do with the legacy character? They're not going to ruin my childhood. What are they going to say about the Jedi religion that I connect with so much? Don't deconstruct my Jedi religion. They're good guys. What are you doing? No, they're not. They did a lot of bad things.
I did call it as soon as Jude Law was like, made the key come to him. I was like, he's a Jedi. And then Stuart was like, it's a trick. And I was like, he's a Jedi. Just wait. I mean, he's not a Jedi. He's got the Force. He hasn't done the training. But like I said,
I love that they kept that a mystery. Like he was wearing gloves, and there was like, I think the Obi-Wan series, there's someone who used like Star Wars tech to make it look like he had Jedi abilities, was posing as like a con Jedi. And so there was a little bit like, this guy's a pirate, he's a con, maybe he's doing that. But I loved it. They kept it all the way to the end until they shared like part of his story. Why
I mean, he did like throw someone across the room going like that. Yeah. Which is a hard trick to do.
Hard trick.
Not impossible, but hard.
Yeah, so I'm with you there. Yeah, the ending was, you know, could I engage with Star Wars and not watch this? Or yes, you're not missing a whole chapter of lore that you're missing in the big family tree, or you know, if you want to relate back to Lord of the Rings, like there's not like a big history here that if you don't know this, then it's not going to mean much. Yeah.
Galactic timeline.
But I love your take on this, because you do good work, practical theology around like healthy, unhealthy communities in theology and religion. So in Star Wars, you have like the binary of good versus evil. Yep. You have black and white. You have the Empire versus the Rebels. And then you have like the ordinary people who are just trying to do their job and live in the universe and just keep their head down. Like Uncle Owen, the parents at Ada, they're just trying to, I just want to make a living, just get out of my way. But then you have the scum and villainy of this there from the very beginning, and the pirates and the scoundrels, and you know, that whole subculture of they're in it for the hustle, but they don't affiliate with the binary, but they're just trying to make a living in this world, like Jod was doing. So what is this story trying to tell about that? And I'm really, it was cathartic for me to like, let's spend some time with the scum and villainy and see how they have a code, they have rules. There's Jod at one point says, we're all hungry. His speech about like appealing to like, look, we're all just trying to eat.
He's been hungry since he was young. So this is
since he was young. And
they're all like, why are you doing this? And he's like,
I was a hungry kid in a hole and someone found me. I saw that person murdered and I was like, that's the kind of galaxy we live in. I don't want to be part of it. I'm just going to do what's for me. There's some good in him. He's not straight out Sith, but he's a con art. I was like, how are they going to redeem this guy? His story helped redeem a little bit there. But what kind of story are they trying to tell, even though it's self-contained? And then within the pantheon of characters within Star Wars, we have our big favorites, the big three, and you know what side you're on. You're on the side of the Empire, hopefully. But then you have this.
One of the big three is my least favorite.
Oh, Luke. Yeah. I know that's okay. You're with Joshua Noel. You guys will connect on that. That, in terms of a blonde haired little kid wanting to be a hero when I was little.
He was okay as a kid. He was fine. It was when he started whining as an adult. I don't want to. This is hard.
What are we doing? This is hard.
I'm in the swamp. Okay, you're in the swamp with Yoda. Go.
Go be with your friends.
Be a superstar. Yeah. So what kind of story is it trying to tell?
Yeah.
I mean, so I tried to think about this, especially in the latter end of the story, because I think in the beginning it's setting up the kind of adventure that they're going to have. Mm-hmm. But then when you find out, and again, I don't think you care about spoilers on this show. But,
yeah, if people click on Skeleton Crew and they haven't watched it yet, then you just know what you're getting into. There are spoilers, folks. Pause here, go watch, come back. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think when you find out that Ad-Aden is like the mint, basically, it's mm-hmm. the place where they make money, and that the big project, or I think, is that what they refer to it as, the big project?
It was the great ordeal, the great work, which mm-hmm. is even more. That's better, honestly, yeah. Because it's this idea of like they're working. Have you ever seen the movie? This will age me. Well, this will actually show that I dated a film major. Have you ever seen Metropolis? That old, like 19. No, but I know of it. Definitely know of it. Yep.
It's exactly that story in the sense that the whole of the Metropolis lives up here, but everything is being done below ground. But they think they are the world, the underground people. But really, what they're doing is everything they're doing is for the people up above. And it's when they finally realize that there are people up there that stuff starts to they get liberated. And I think what we see in this story is that these people have a perfectly fine life. It's a fine life. However, one of the things I think that all the kids share, even Elephant.
Neil.
Yes. Is that they want something else, and they're wanting something else is different, I will say. Especially, some of the older of the two kids, including the captain, the girl who becomes captain. I'm terrible with names. Fern, there you go. They're all looking for something because they know that what they're doing is fine, but that it's just fine. And so I think what we see here is that when they go out and they explore, they do meet pirates and scallions in the nasty part of life, but the nasty part of life gives them a little insight that their life isn't life. Their life is a protected little bubble. And so, I that's the sort of message that I got from it, is that they can't go back now. You can't put it back in there. They've seen too much. And I love her little speech Fern's speech at the end with her mom, where she's like, look, we were out there and we saw a lot of terrible things. But every single time we went to a planet and saw terrible things, there were also good people there too.
I love that line. I immediately wrote it down. And
I was just like, yes, that's the thing, is that she knows that is a universe worth fighting for. Because if it is just pirates, then we could just be like, okay, well, we're out. Like, they're going to destroy each other and we'll keep our little cocoon and no one's going to bother us. But if there are good people out there, then you're obligated to go out into the world. If you're someone like that. My one disappointment, not my one, but one of my disappointments is when the dad of one of the main kid characters Wade is riding his bike. I thought he was going to pop out of it. I thought it was going to be, because he like turns on the electricity. He's almost getting shot by Jude Law. Like, I was like, oh, he's in it now. All the parents are in it. But I don't feel like that's going to happen. They clearly left it up for a season 2. I think that's going to happen. I think that was the anticlimactic.
Yeah.
I will say Star Wars is bad at concluding a story it wants to keep open. Mm-hmm. And I don't even think that's a criticism. It's just like, why is Jude Law just staring off into the distance as a thing explodes? Because we need Jude Law to be alive.
Yeah. I kept in the press release and stuff, and a little bit. I try not to watch too much of that stuff, but it seemed like they were like, "This is a self-contained story. We're one and done. We're not going to build off lots of seasons. We just hope to, do this." And so I thought for sure they were going to kill a parent, or maybe even a kid, or even Jude Law, because they were like, "Oh, they're not going to do this anymore." But they definitely left it open for like, if this is successful, then we can do more with this. And then I liked his character so much. I was glad to see that he didn't die, and that he perhaps could pop up in a Mandalorian movie around the corner, or show up again at some point.
I don't think that he can die.
Yeah.
In this universe, because honestly, without him, there is you have the ragtag group, but you kind of need him as the anti-hero, because he is someone who clearly has the Force. He was trying to be trained by someone who gets killed. That story comes out, and he uses his Force for not great purposes. But then he also doesn't really hurt anybody. When you watch, because I rewound him shooting at he's not really, none of it's real. And I think it's interesting that, because we joke about the stormtroopers being horrible shots, and my God, aren't they? But he is a horrible shot, and he's got the Force. So we know that's not real.
Even the pirates were pretty bad trying to shoot at the kids on their bikes. So they're just as bad shots as the stormtrooper. But her comment about we've seen a lot of crazy things in this universe, but we still saw some good people, and that's worth fighting for. Juxtaposed with Jod's, I saw the person who saved me get murdered. Therefore, the universe is meaningless. That whole problem of pain question is legit. Him going down that road, yep, sorry. The only one person who showed me any kind of love was so I'm going to get mine. That with her side by side was interesting to me, because I think that's the story they're trying to tell, is you have one of these pirates just chasing the riches, the gold, the credits, cold, hard credits. And then you have found friendship, found family through this adventure with the kids. Some of them liked each other, were best friends, but they eventually became a core group where they really liked each other and loved each other, cared for each other. And then they had a renewed sense of love of their family. That's and I love how in this final episode, they applied what they learned through the entire series to be able to fly a plane, fix things, stick up for one another, shoot a laser gun and shoot down the pirate ship. Neil was up there just firing away. They applied everything they had learned, even knowing what they learned, the cautionary tale of Jod, to say I learned from this, and I'm going to do some things differently and go down a different path. I thought that was neat, that you're showing what they learned along the way to work as a team by the end, and then say yep, we're sitting on a pile of money, but that could mean nothing to them. They don't care about the credits or the gold. They want to make sure KB is alive and okay. Did we win? That's great. And then eventually
as it pours out on her.
Yes, as they pour out, is that they
don't
just
care at all. They're just
they don't care that machine in Vegas is dumping out coins at all. They're just looking right at their friends. And the fact that the end also, there's just assessment, standard. It's also a slight on standardized testing. So it's at least you don't have to take your assessments now. And he's like, whew.
Oh
I was
God.
Yeah, down with the SAT. I hate that thing.
As someone who was a teacher, I was stressed about that the whole time.
Yeah.
I was God, I hope he gets by. I hope they let him have a bye on that. But I think it's also interesting that innocence here, it plays into the Star Wars good and bad, because of course, with a lot of Star Wars stories, they try to conflict us in terms of what is good, what is bad, how does one turn good and bad. And I think the Kylo Ren and his story really plays into that. Is is he good? Is he bad? Whatever. I mean, we pushed Han Solo off a bridge, and there was a bridge. I start screaming every time there's a bridge. I start yelling, and Stuart thinks I'm insane.
Why aren't there railings?
The bridges. Nothing good happens on a bridge. That would be my Star Wars shirt. Nothing good happens on a bridge. Make it.
Yeah.
So, but I think they're playing with that in the show, because there's an innocence there. And so to them, they don't see the conflict with, I still call him Crimson Jack, because that was the first thing I feel that. I mean, he's got a million.
So many aliases. Everybody was don't trust this guy with a different name. They're who are you? And I think that story you tell of who are you is a good question. Yeah. And that's a throwback to one of the Marvel comics in the 70s. One of the first pirates that Han Solo meets after the original movie in the Marvel comic books is this guy named Crimson Jack. It's not Jude Law. He's definitely a redhead wearing like a Speedo in a vest. But he but it was a good callback to the comics. And people read the comics like, oh, I know that name. Is that him or what? But anyway, go ahead. Yeah, his alias is, and whether you know him or not is
so it's Jude Law essentially, and he does have this conflict, and you see it even when he's talking to the captain, which is the little girl Ren, and he's like, just stand down. He knows he has to take control of the situation, and he doesn't say it's a fight to the death, but he's like, just stand down, just don't do this. You can see that he could kill them, and he kills a few people in the show, so it's not outside the realm. But they don't see that conflict. To them, he's a bad guy. That's it. Yep. And I think because he's not working, and so whenever they call to the owl lady and they're like, "Oh, bring in the good guys," and the Republic comes, it's like those are the good guys, you know. And to them, that's it. Like Jude Law is not in conflict. There's no conflict there. He is a bad guy. These are the good guys. And I sort of like that in a way. That it's not making you, I think this is where the kids will really like it is, and honestly, some adults, including myself, is like, you know what? What is a bad guy? Oh, okay. He didn't fillet up their dad. Congrats. Like,
that's a win.
Not me on a given Wednesday. Like, you know, it's not a conflict if you're an asshole.
Yeah, I agree. I do like that. I think some of the toxic fandom will get upset because Star Wars hasn't, as of late in the last decade, leaned into the binary too hard, or they've deconstructed the Jedi religion a little bit. There's a gray Jedi is what has Luke done or not done, or Kylo Ren, or even the Acolyte. You know, even the backstory looking through a different lens. You're you're ruining my childhood. You could turn my childhood heroes into villains now, but that not that that's what they're trying to do, but I see a nuance in the grand military industrial complex is a good critique of Star Wars, you know. But this particular one they're like, here comes the good guys, and there was no nuance around these X-wing fighters, whether they were like, you know, is them versus the pirates, and they save their planet and bring in hope, a new hope.
They had the right shaped ship. That's all the
right shaped ship, and roll credits, and like, good, we can go down a different one. We can go, you know, when Andor comes out, you know, season 2 in the spring or summer, then we can get to the nuance of the New Republic, Old Republic, Rebels, who's good guy and bad guy. Can get really nuanced. But for this kid show, it's okay that the X-Wing fighters,
it's okay that they're the good guys, and he's the bad guy because he's holding up their lives. And I think, you know what, kids. Yeah. That will be okay. And honestly, I was okay with it too. And I think, honestly, I wonder if George Lucas didn't want to play into that a little bit, which is that he made these stark contrasts. I mean, the outfits are clear. Like, if you're dressed slightly Nazi-esque and you have black and red on, it's not doing well for you. And if you're in some sort of like heavenly Jesus robe, you're doing well, right? But then you get these characters that are like, okay, so like, is Darth Vader. Is he really, a bad guy? Like,
he's got a story. He
blew up some planets. Not so nice. But again, I think it's the questioning of so you have this good and bad side, and as our brains, we love to put people in them. But what does it really mean to actually stick someone into those categories?
Yeah. I agree. And I like it that like the pirates and the scum and villainy, it's been they show up, they're on the edges. They're not a lot of attention paid to them in the grand story of Star Wars, but this one just focused in on them. There's room for that. I loved it. Super fun. You can have fun with those villains, and what are they chasing? What's the meaning of life? What are they really chasing? The money or family, love? Are they just hungry and they're trying to make their survival? They're just trying to survive in this universe where there's this big galactic star war going on. Then there's room for that story.
So here's a question for you. I'm going to ask you a question. Out of the ones that are from the Disney, I'll call it the Disney universe that we've recently. What's your favorite of, I'll go with TV shows. Favorite, least favorite.
Look what banner I made that we were going to ask.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah, that's it. You didn't even know that was happening. You're force sensitive. You knew that was out there. I love it. Yeah. Before I get into that real quick, what were your thoughts on the supervisor just being a big robot with a red eye?
Not surprised. I think, well, yeah, surprised. Yeah. I mean, like surprised as in like, I didn't know it was coming. But then when you think about the whole system, not surprised, right? Like the fact that we're being led by like someone who talks in vague words and is dictating stuff and still has, this is how Stuart knew where it was in the timeline, because when he said the Jedi are betrayers or whatever, he was like, oh. But then he said it was farther down the timeline because of how fast the good guys got there. Because he was like, they got there real fast and there was a whole bunch of them and they had really advanced ships. And I was just like, cool, I'll tell Will that.
Yeah. I like, I was kind of hoping for like a cameo of a legacy. I don't know, like maybe some well-known pirate or character or something that would show up that is the supervisor. I was kind of anticipating that, but the fact that it was just like a big droid where the whole planet is ruled by like robotics tech, supervising robots, watching them in this era of robotics and tech and AI and question of that, all that ruling the entire planet. Like that's pretty cool. And I loved, you'll notice that it's a red eye and then it would sometime go to blue, then red back and forth. And these, even within itself, had a conflicting narrative of like, yep, I'm working for the Empire, or no, I'm still part of the Old Republic. And it's trying to get its narrative straight and trying to keep order on this planet. So that for me was kind of a neat way to do it. So I was secretly hoping for maybe a little bit bigger of a cameo, but that just makes sense in the story writing.
The voice was Stephen Fry. All you Brit lovers out there will know maybe who Stephen Fry is. So as soon as we heard the voice, Stuart was like, "That's Stephen Fry. It's Stephen Fry, the supervisor."
Super cool.
No, he wasn't. But also, yeah, I think it is one of those things where it's like once the electricity goes out, there's no one like leading this, and once he pokes the eyeball out. I think that's really interesting what you talked about with the colors, that it's switching back and forth, because it is this idea of like, and then as soon as he like quote kills the machine, the woman that is like, what have you done? Like, we have no one to guide us. It's like, it's a machine. Favorite and least favorite.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, in the ranking, the streaming shows, I love The Mandalorian. I love what they captured there from the very beginning. Season 1, Baby Yoda, Grogu. Season 2 of The Mandalorian, how they ended that with a young, heroic Luke Skywalker after seeing The Last Jedi, and seeing that was like, that's the Luke Skywalker I wanted, and so glad I saw it. So it's hard to beat that for me. And then the other streaming have been fun. I've liked them. They've added to the lore, but I will say, yeah, it's like apples and oranges. Like it's hard to rank, but I think my number one favorite is Mandalorian, and season 2 with Luke. And then I will say Skeleton Crew, probably because it's up there for me, because it's not steeped in so much like lore and legacy characters and expectations. I could take a breath, and coming off the Acolyte and all my complicated relationship with that show, and the ups and downs I loved about and didn't like about that show, Skeleton Crew came at a good palate cleanser. And I was just able to have fun with Star Wars. And that's what I was looking for in the series. So it's going to be up there for that. So that's where I am. How about you in terms of the streaming services? Stuart, if you're still on watching, what is yours? Oh, there he is. I think he chimed in. It's probably the best standalone in his humble opinion. Andor, folks. Yeah, Andor is, and yeah, I thought it was fun, or not fun. It's just like, it's good storytelling, good dramatic storytelling. And then season 2, it's definitely going to get the most PR leading up to season 2. That's the most anticipated because people love season 1. So, yeah. So, how about you, Leah? What
my favorite? I'm going to say, Stuart will know this, which is my favorite. Obi-Wan. I really enjoyed that. I thought it added to the story. Now, I already love that character and that actor. So, like, it wasn't a very hard sell for me. But also, I think the way that it was done, I'm kind of the opposite a little bit, in the sense that because I'm late in the game and because I don't hang out on the podcasts and stuff like that, is that I kind of like getting the inside scoop on stuff and seeing the background and stuff. So, like, that one, The Mandalorian, I think, hit. They did well with that. Like it is an episodic thing that does not bore me. I'm never bored watching it because I like the story. Again, I think how they ended it, you know, with them all getting together. I love Mandor and the like story and the lore behind that. And then I will say 3 is Ahsoka. I really liked that, again, to get the background of some of these characters that we're in, and they're important, and we know that they're important, but I like that. Least favorite, this is going to come as not a shocker, but Boba Fett.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I will say part of that is, and I dressed up as Boba Fett for Halloween one year. They make a Boba Fett outfit, and I've got it. I might wear it to beer camp.
Yes. There you go.
I was really interested in his character. I think they just made it too not his character. I didn't mind that he was like, oh, I'm like taking over this town, like Jabba the Hutt, blah, blah. But like, it became not really him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's something about like the silent, not say much, the mystery. Oh, this guy's a badass because he doesn't say a whole lot and wears a mask, and it's the coolest mask and outfit in all of Star Wars and the coolest ship in all of Star Wars. And he's a bounty hunter. Oh man. And then when you get to know him, you're like, you're that's scary. You're kind of goofy. What is going on here?
Right. And he's like, I'm going to save this planet. And it's like, okay, you were not in this conflicted category before, and now you are, and that's fine. It makes you interesting. But also, I wanted to see you kick ass and take names, and now you're not doing it.
And I think that show had the problem of them shoehorning in 3 episodes of The Mandalorian, where it's like season 2.5. I know they had COVID to worry about, and they're they're experimenting in the streaming. That if they just told Boba Fett's story and then saved that for Mandalorian season 3, I get it. Mandalorian's popular, Luke Skywalker's popular, Baby Grogu's popular, and they teamed up in, Boba Fett showed back up in Mandalorian. So
Mm-hmm.
why not do the same in his? But I think just letting him have his own story without.
I was going to say, they didn't show up in like Ahsoka, and I think that's still in the Mandoverse. So it's like, why did they show up in Boba Fett? Like, I don't. To me, I was like, okay, wait, okay, there's a Mandalorian. That's fine that you're all at the same time.
Yeah.
But why are you in the show? Is it? And I thought initially it was to bring the ratings up, but I don't know if that's true. You said stuff about COVID. I'm not. I don't work for Disney, Will. Did you know?
That's right. And would I want to? Maybe. I don't know. I'd be a consultant in some storytelling.
I mean, it's on the bottom line, but yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I am. I like it. We have these different options. I mean, if you would have told me as a kid that, there would be these streaming services and TV shows, and I would have loved it. I had to wait 3 years for the next movie and fill in the gaps with some novels and comics and my own imagination with my own action figures. Then, and that's part of it is, I think Star Wars has a legacy of, or fans have, like they love it, and then they build a headcanon and they tell the story. And when they don't tell that story that's already in your head, you're like, I'm disappointed. You didn't do it my way.
Well,
so
this was my footnote, and this leads into this.
Okay.
Is my footnote was Twin Peaks, if you remember. So we put a little flag in it.
Yep.
I watched the first episode of the new reboot of Twin Peaks, which was many a year ago. And I was like, oh, they're going to ruin it.
Yeah.
And then I didn't watch a single episode. This was a show I obsessed over. And I was like, oh no, they're going to mess this up. And I never watched another thing. Will I revisit it? Of course I will, because I'm a glutton for punishment. I got a PhD. However, also, do you think that there is a point where it's too much?
Oh, yeah.
Too much content for Star Wars. And I'm not saying I'm there yet, because again, I'm just coming into it. There's ones I haven't seen. So I haven't seen Han Solo. I actually haven't seen The Acolyte. Those are the 2.
Yeah. Well, it'd be interesting your take on The Acolyte. Maybe you watch that and come back and revisit and share, and you and Stuart both talk about it. I'd love to hear his thoughts on Acolyte. It's a conflict within me of good and light when it comes to that show, and a couple of the movies out there, but still Star Wars, and it's fun. There's lightsabers.
They pulled that real quick, didn't they?
Yeah, they pulled that real fast. The Han Solo movie I really liked because it came off. I had so much like conflict within me about Last Jedi, stuff I really loved and stuff I really hated. And I was just a ball, do I even understand or love Star Wars? I mean, there's existential questions as a Star Wars fan after Last Jedi, that when Han Solo came, I was like, I'm just going to go in and have fun. And there's no expectations. And guess what? I had fun. My expectations were just, hey, maybe I should go into all movies that way or all stories. And it doesn't mean I have to love it all. Doesn't mean I have to like it all. It just like, maybe I should go in with like guarded or like realistic expectations. And
absolutely. That's how I went into The Mandalorian. I was like, is this going to change my life? Maybe not. I mean, I wouldn't put it past Pedro Pascal, but it's possible.
He's going to be in a new Marvel movie this summer. I don't know if you've heard Fantastic Four. He's going to be Mr. Fantastic this summer. The original first family of Marvel Comics, Fantastic Four. He's playing Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, and I can't wait for that. And to see what the family.
I can't get enough of him. So yeah.
Yeah. So folks, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the questions, those online, those later. Leah, thanks for being here and geeking out Star Wars. I could probably do this for a whole nother hour, and we'll do it again at some point. Is too much. Yeah, I think there is something to be said about holding back a little bit and waiting a little while and let things build. And then, there's comics and there's novels and there's video games and there's movies and shows. I'm ready for a Star Wars movie. I think the streaming series are fun, but I'm ready for it to be back in the theater and to go with the family and get some popcorn and just have a fun Star Wars movie. That's where I'm really wanting. I know there's the streaming wars and there's investors and stockholders when it comes to Disney and expectations of what they need for in the midst of everything. But I really would love they're hurting.
Disney's hurting.
They're hurting. I know.
They're like, They're like those pirates. They're just trying to survive out there.
They're hungry. They're all just hungry.
Really?
Hungry for what? Hungry for what? We don't know. Like, share, review the show. Let us know what you think. Chime in the comments. If we missed something, I'm sure we did. There's, favorite character moments and characters and things we could talk about. Let us know what your thoughts are, and would love to engage with you. Where can people find you and engage with you? You have your own podcast, and other than the Theology Beer Camp and those places, where people can find and engage with you.
I am most found on at Theology on the Rocks Instagram. So that's at Theology on the Rocks. That's my podcast with Christy Whaley. We talk a lot of stuff, and we drink a lot of stuff, but we talk a lot of stuff. So we have a good time. And then we also have these guys. We're going to get people on, and we cross over. We just did a podcast. We did Till It Today with Taylor.
Yay.
So we're all pals, and it's actually really fun. We all
new favorite person. Gosh,
we really enjoy each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I say that I shouldn't sound so incredulous, but like we really do. Like, this is the highlight of our days most of the time. So. Yeah, I took a break. My dad passed away last month and over Christmas, and I was like, yeah, rightfully so. I'm taking a break from podcasting and focus on family and those things. And then I was like, man, I hopped on a podcast like, Will, you okay? And like, no, I need this. This is good. I need to podcast. I need to hang out with some friends. I need to geek out. I need to do other stuff. So it's an outlet to go and geek out. So yeah, there's a reason why I do these things and love and geek out with each other. So I agree. And yeah, one of the most things I'm impressed with you and Christy was you did a Hot Ones. You answered theological questions, two of them, while eating hot wings as they got hotter and hotter and hotter. So did the questions, so that the heat was brought when it comes to figuratively and literally when it comes to answering big, mysterious questions that everyone. It was my idea, and then it became a thing. Yeah. And when things become a thing,
they keep being things.
So be careful, because we got Tom in there last year, and we need somebody for this year. So,
dude, I'm ready. That's
really? All right.
Yes, I will step up. I love the show Hot Ones. I feel like my wife, Cindy, she is so like her. She loves spicy things. She could eat she could go hot and probably be fine. And she's brought me along with Thai food and Indian food, and I feel like my my threshold for pain with spicy things have gotten better over the year, and I could train for hot ones up front. We could do a systematic ecology, theology, and the rock crossover hot ones. That would get me to beer camp. That would get me to beer camp.
Also, I will say that Tom was real tough until a certain point, and one of our listeners, Bryant, found the exact timestamp where he started to go downhill real fast. So of course we made sure to point that out because. Do
you watch Hot Ones too? Is that recommended? Yeah. Did you see the Conan O'Brien one? Like that was.
No, I haven't.
Oh. Watch it tonight. I'm a big Conan O'Brien fan. He's obnoxious. He's not everybody's sense of humor. He's definitely mine. And his Hot Ones is when I was crying so hard at one point that he's so obnoxious but so fun. Watch that tonight. That's my hype.
You don't think it's going to take over your life the way that it does? Like, well, when I'm going to say when you do it now, your whole being just like you're just surviving. Like, and the problem is questions are coming at you.
It's like an ayahuasca experience.
there was one time where one of our questions, it was like one of the hottest. It was like, does hell exist? And I was like, I don't know. I don't even care anymore.
I don't care. I'm in it right now. Maybe this might be it.
So it gets
I'm ready. Cool. We'll see. It hasn't been announced where our next theology beer camp is. I'm hoping East Coast because it makes it easier for me, but we'll see.
I don't think we're moving that direction though, Will.
Okay, then it
was in your church, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah, the original post Edinburgh trip back in the States in North Carolina, the God Pods. We were the new hope of theology beer camps, and then it was the God Pods Strike Back, and then Return of the God Pods. So yeah, I'm very happy that the first movie I saw in the theater was A New Hope, and then the first theology beer camp in the States was the God Pod. So So hey, I would love it if whoever's watching on YouTube, we could get 50 likes. And in the summer, there was I would frolic through flowers if we got 50. But now I'm upping it, but since it's winter, and I'm going to Utah Friday for a ski trip. So I will, if we get 50 likes on this video, I will dance in the snow in my bathing suit and record it and put it on YouTube. So there's your challenge, folks. Share, review, this campaign with your friends. I will be in the snow in a bathing suit and we'll frolic. I'll do a snow angel.
Is it still snowy in Chapel Hill?
No, it's they canceled school for 3 days, even though there's a little ice just in the bushes.
But you love your kids so much, you want them around you all the time.
That's right. But we're going to Utah where it's supposed to be 8 degrees and a lot of snow. So I would do it there. But your window's short for a week if you can get 50 likes on this. So yes. Leah, thanks for being a part of this. Super fun. We'll do it again. And we have all kinds of different kinds of sign-offs here. But your favorite, I'll let you sign us off with what's your favorite Star Wars phrase? Could be the Force be with you. It could be whatever your favorite Star Wars phrase is. We'll let that be the final quote.
All right. Well, I wish it was the opposite direction, but I need you to say something for me to help me here.
Okay.
Say, I love you. But you got to say, Leah. I love you.
Leah, I love you.
I know.
Hey guys, Christian here to talk about our Captivate options. That's when you send us a little extra money to just help us along with our project. But what do you get by giving us that extra money? Well, you have access to any future online D&D campaigns. You get extra bonus question content, which we do at least 48 times a month. You can make a one-time donation here of any amount to help support the show. This helps us with our overhead. That includes the editing software that we use, the recording software that we use, the marketing that we have to do for the show, the equipment that we all need to use to help out with the show, and more. So thank you for what you do. Head out to Captivate. Help us out. We really appreciate what you do. See you later.
If you love our show, you can follow the whole network in a single feed on Spotify at Anna's Our Ministry Podcast or the network page on Apple Podcasts. There you'll find shows like The Homely, The Whole Church Podcast, My Seminary Life, Let Nothing Move You, Dummy for Theology, the Bible After Hours, as well as mine and my husband's show, The Clydes, where my husband Taylor and I go through weekly discussions in a devotional conversational method to help us all get closer to one another and God.